Could the Rams and Robert Woods reunite? I mean, it's really interesting. And this is going to be a Jake Raw video. I'm just raw reacting. Robert Woods was released by the Tennessee Titans, according to Jordan Schultz. And I'm not going to lie, it's an interesting thought. I've brought up many times on JE Live. I brought it up in videos. You look, the Rams have experience. They know, hey, you can never have too many receivers. They went through a myriad of injuries this past season. They went through injuries the year before. They had Deshaun Jackson peace out. They had, Odell Beckham Jr. go down with a torn ACL. They had Robert Woods go down with a torn ACL the day Odell Beckham Jr. was going to sign. It happened in practice. Here's the thing. The Rams right now are in a weird position because we don't know what they're going to do with their money. We don't know if they're going to make a big trade. We don't know what they're going to do. But Robert Woods not only has proven that he fits the offense, and after last year, maybe you bring him back. Maybe you try to have something comfortable. But keep this in mind, Robert Woods is a free agent for the first time since going into the 2017 season. When he signed with the LA Rams, he had 2 contract extensions. One, he went all the way through, and the second one, he was traded halfway through. He was traded to the Tennessee Titans. So does Robert Woods want to come back? I would imagine he'd consider it. I mean, he's from the LA area. He went to school at USC. Obviously, he knows Sean McVay well, and the Rams did right by Robert Woods because when they traded him, they wanted to trade him to a place he wanted to go to, and he wanted to go to the Titans. So, I do, in that sense, feel like the bridge hasn't been burned. I could see him also going back to the Buffalo Bills. I think he'd fit there, and, he spent 4 years there. He was drafted there. But I think it's honestly a possibility he goes to the Rams. He's very much considered a Ram at this point. He spent 5 years in LA. It looked like he was going to join. He was going to stay with the Rams going into the season. They went out, they got Allen Robinson. They had all 3 of those, Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Robert Woods. And then they traded him. And it was pretty much a salary dump. And it made me upset, made a lot of fans upset. Robert Woods hasn't had a plus 1,000-yard season since 2019. But at the same time, he had a really good year in 2020, considering that, Jared Goff was basically only throwing to Cooper Kupp, and he took a significant step back that year. And then 2021, he was still on pace for over 1,000 yards before he tore his ACL at 556 yards and 4 touchdowns. So this past year, he had 527 yards on 53 receptions for 2 touchdowns. It was the lowest yards per catch rate or yards per reception rate of his career. And he just didn't really look like the same receiver. Now, could that be the ACL tear? Maybe. But could that also be the fact that he was in one of the most boring offenses in the NFL in the Tennessee Titans? Probably more so that. I think he fits the Rams offense like a glove, but the film shows that. He had 781 yards his first year with the Rams. He injured his shoulder. He had 5 touchdowns, 13.9 yards per reception. His second year on the Rams was arguably his best year because he had the yards, he had the receptions, and he had the touchdowns. Not to mention just the rushing yards. 19 carries for 157 yards, 8.3 yards per carry. He had 6 touchdowns, a 14.2 yards per reception average, 1,200 yards on 86 receptions. And then 2019, he had 90 receptions for 1,134 yards, 12.6 yards per reception, only 2 touchdowns, and he had 17 carries for 115 yards. And then 2020, he had 936 yards on 90 receptions, had back-to-back 90 receptions. And then this, the last season with Stafford, unfortunately, he had that taken away from him. And that was looking like it was clearly going to be a career high for touchdown passes or touchdown receptions for his career. In a season, he's tied it twice. It's 6. He had 6 in 2018 and 6 in 2020. He had 4 in 2021 halfway through the season. So obviously, you would have to imagine he would have had more than 4 at the end of that season if he played it all the way through. So, let's talk a little bit about this. Okay. It's not just as simple as getting Robert Woods. What would this cost? And To me, I think he's a very talented receiver. I love the guy. I've met the guy. He's one of my favorite players all time. He's a fan favorite, but we have to be real here. I don't think he would cost that much. I think the receiver market is decent enough to keep him relatively cheap. I think when you look at his past 2 seasons, whether it's the ACL tear or not, he still hasn't had 600 yards in the past 2 seasons. He hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since 2019. He's only had 6 touchdowns in the last 2 years. I mean, Robert Woods, he just hit 30. Who knows what happens, right? The ACL tear was definitely a real bummer. But the question remains, can Robert Woods still ball out? Can he still play at a high level? And, can he be worth a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 role? And I believe he can. But now, what does that cost? I think at max, it'd be like $5-6 million for 1 year, because I think he's going to have to go on a 1-year prove-it deal. And I know that sounds crazy and might sound disrespectful, and I love Robert Woods, so I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but you're coming off back-to-back seasons where you haven't hit 600 yards. You got injured that first year, but keep in mind the injury is still a red flag to teams that are going to sign players. So when you look at 2021 and you see that torn ACL, there are some teams that are like, I don't know about this. He's 30, didn't have a great year last year, albeit it's not very much of a pass-happy offense. He had Ryan Tannehill throwing to him, and then when he got hurt, he had a rookie quarterback who doesn't want to throw 15 yards down the field. So a lot of, dump offs, which is why he had his lowest yards per carry average. It was probably the worst year of his career. I would say it was the worst year of his career. Even his rookie year, I thought, he looked better. So, there's definitely some reservations there, but, I think he'd be relatively cheap. I think in that $5 million below zone a year, I think is what you'd be looking at. It'd be a 1-year deal. But do the Rams do that? Because they're also very much interested in going back out and trying to get Odell Beckham Jr. to play for the Rams again. The last time Odell Beckham Jr. suited up, it was in the Super Bowl for the LA Rams. Don't forget, Odell did not sign with a team. He did not go to another team, so there's a very good possibility that the Rams are still going to be in play, and they're going to be a favorite, and they're going to go hard after him. We don't know anything about Allen Robinson. The foot injury was a concern. He hasn't been great either. I would argue he's been worse than Robert Woods, obviously production-wise, but I think he looked better this year than Woods did. I think he was open and just didn't really get the ball as much. So that is a whole big thing. Robert Woods is getting paid nothing now because he just got cut, but I don't think he's going to get paid a ton. Whereas you look at Allen Robinson, and he does a little bit more, as far as going up and high pointing the football, boxing out defenders, all that. But Robert Woods fits the offense more. Allen Robinson, they were almost using like he was Robert Woods, and he's going to get paid, $18 million is his cap hit this year. So they're going to have to figure something out. They can't afford to pay him that. And if you're going to trade Jalen Ramsey before you try to figure out how to trade Allen Robinson, you're going to lose me on that thought, because I just think that's just wrong. So, the question is, if they sign Robert Woods, say, let's just be generous and let's just say $5 million for Robert Woods. He gets a decent amount of money for a 1-year deal. He's back with Cooper Kupp. He's back with Van Jefferson. Obviously, he's back with McVay and so forth. But what's his role? Are we certain that Robert Woods is better than Van Jefferson right now? Where are we on Robert Woods? Because I know a lot of people are very high on him, but for me, I'm more high on the idea of bringing him in because he knows the scheme. He knows the offense. The offense has clicked with him. He just does all the little things well, and he's a fan favorite. But do I currently think that this Robert Woods right now that we saw in 2022, coming off the ACL tear, that he's better than Van Jefferson? No, I do not. I think Van Jefferson is a little bit more athletic. He's a lot more athletic right now. And I think Van, going into, potentially his contract year, I don't know. I don't know if you could say Woods is better. And then that leads you to the next thing. He's not better than Cooper Kupp right now. And, then you talk about Allen Robinson. Is he better than Allen Robinson? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I thought Allen Robinson looked better. He just, he got hurt midway through the year. But he was definitely going to be putting up bigger numbers than Robert Woods. So then you have Tutu Atwell and you have Ben Skoranek. And at that point, it's like, how good is Robert Woods right now in this day and age? And so I want him back. Don't get me wrong. But it has to be for the right price. And you have to know what you're doing. You can't just bring back Robert Woods to bring him back. You have to figure out what you're doing. Because the thing about bringing Allen Robinson, it made sense. You were diversifying the receiver room. The thing about Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, Cooper Kupp is they all kind of do similar things. So you don't want to have three of the same type of receivers. Ideally, you want to diversify your receiver room. So you want to have a big-bodied receiver. You want to have a speedster that can take the top off the defense. And you want to have an all-around guy like Cooper Kupp that, is a great route runner, that, uses great ankle flexion of getting upfield quickly and making plays after the catch and can block and all sorts of things like that, where is interchangeable. You can move him to the outside. You can move him inside, all of that. That's ideally what you want for the receiver role. That's ideally what you want in your receiver room. So it's very intriguing to see where this goes. I think if they were to get Woods, it would take them out of the Odell sweepstakes in all likelihood. But this is a guy that had 623 receptions from 2022 to 2023. He's had 7,604 yards, 12.2 yards per reception. And he's had 37 touchdowns to go with 74 carries for 507 yards and 6.9 yards per carry. He can help you on end arounds. He can help you as a running back if you need him and use him in that way. But there's a chance you're not getting the same Robert Woods that you once saw before the injury. So there's always stuff to debate about this. If I'm making my final call, I'm saying it doesn't hurt to bring him in on a cheap 1-year deal. I don't think it does, because at the very least you bring him in and now it's like, okay, if we don't get anything big, don't draft anybody, whatever, and you move on from Allen Robinson, you still have a good receiver in Robert Woods. But, it's like having too many of the same thing in the receiver room. If you want my honest opinion, I think Robert Woods is going to go somewhere else. I think he loved his time in LA, and had he not been traded, he absolutely would still be there. But I don't think when he was traded, he ever thought this was going to be possible. I thought that I would imagine he thought the Titans would be in the playoffs. It was going to work out, and it didn't. And when you look across the league, there are teams that need receivers more than the Rams do. And does Robert Woods want to go back to the Rams for the sake of, just being a guy in that, that offense and being there, loving the culture, loving LA, loving the fan base? Or does he want to, add more production? Does he want to get more targets? Because if he goes to the Giants, like, he'd be one of their top receivers. If he goes to Buffalo, you could argue he's wide receiver too. I think he's better than Gabe Davis. So, there's a question there. Like, do you want to go to the Buffalo Bills? Do you want to go back home? Do you want to go to the Giants? There are a lot of different teams. The Steelers would be an interesting option, especially with a young quarterback in Kenny Pickett to have that safety net. We don't know what the deal will be with a lot of how free agency goes and whatnot. Maybe he goes to Kansas City. What if he wants to go and play with Patrick Mahomes? I mean, I don't think anything is certainly a guarantee. And I'm going to say I don't think he's going to go back to the Rams. I've heard that there could be some interest between the two. And if he does go back, I won't be shocked and I'd love it. But I am not counting on Robert Woods to be back with the Rams. I will say that as I finish this video. I think that there are too many teams out there that need receiver help. And I know the draft is coming up, but you don't know what's going to happen in the draft. If you go into the draft hasn't started yet, and you're like, you know what? We're not going to sign any receivers. We got the draft. All right. Well, the draft doesn't always go how you think it's going to go. And we've seen that before. We've seen runs on wide receivers. And this draft looks like it's going to be no different, where we're going to get a run on receivers right around the first and second round. All those starting caliber receivers are going to be off the board. And, some teams I don't know. They're going to need some help. So I don't know. I don't think he ends up with the Rams again. Maybe he retires with them someday, because I think I'd be shocked if he plays another 6 seasons with a different team. And unless he does that, then, he's going to end up being mainly looked at as a Ram, because he's played 5 years with the Rams, and that was in his prime. And so I think, this is if he doesn't come back, it's okay. He'll be known as a Ram. He'll be able to retire as a Ram, signing a one-day deal. I would prefer he doesn't do anything like Isaac Bruce did, going to, the 49ers. But, I think the point here is that there are plenty of different options. And I would argue, if Derek Carr goes to the Jets or Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, I think he should consider the Jets. I think getting to play with Garrett Wilson would be something for him to be able to take on somewhat of a mentor role, but also having just that safety net, because he's just so consistent. He's a great route runner. He's willing to help you in the run game. As a blocker, he's one of the best blockers in the NFL. I think there's going to be too many teams after him for the Rams to bring him back. And I think he'll be relatively cheap, but I think he's going to have a lot of suitors. So we'll see. He could join KOC in Minnesota as well. That's certainly a possibility with Adam Thielen, potentially out. You bring him in with Justin Jefferson, and, I don't know, but there are a lot of suitors. If you have an idea of where you think Robert Woods is going to go, leave it in the comment section below. But I am Jake Ellenbogen, and this has been my raw reaction on the Robert Woods release from the Tennessee Titans. Later, folks.